of Timbuktu. It's maybe twice the size. And if you put that in comparison to the size of Timbuktu in regards to the rest of the world's cities during the Middle Ages, Timbuktu was somewhere around twice the size of London.
Timbuktu is twice the size of London.
And this site is twice the size of Timbuktu.
Wow.
One fascinating fact to emerge is that these people lived together peacefully for centuries.
Now that looks very much like a skull.
That is a skull, and what we can tell from it is that it's probably not going to be an Islamic burial because its head is facing south.
So would he have definitely been in a grave?
Yeah, he was.
You
definitely
can tell he was buried as opposed to fell there.
Well, yeah, it's a good question.
Fell in battle.
Well, we don't really find any evidence for warfare in West Africa during the pre-Islamic period, and we're not really quite sure why that is. Peaceful society, we don't know. The general practice would have been is to bury the dead underneath the floor of the house.
Oh, I see. It's granddad under the house.
Yeah, good old granddad under the house.
So, I mean, are you going to excavate him, or are you going to leave him?
No,
here?
he's far too fragile to excavate.
So you're going to leave him to rest in peace?
For a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to show me the rest of the site?
Sure, I would.
These densely packed, interdependent communities each had a specific skill base. Some were farmers, others fishermen. There were potters and metal workers. Their activities cleared forests that once covered this landscape.
Some iron slag, and you see here, this is the byproduct of iron smelting. So now, if you can imagine, the amount of wood to make charcoal, amount of charcoal to fire the furnaces to melt the iron ore is an immense amount of wood.
So there must have been trees. There must have been a lot of trees.
Especially African hardwood trees, and you only have acacia now, and that's it. So
could it be as a result of the smelting?
Absolutely.
Much of the pottery carpeting this site served the same purpose as our tin cans and plastic bags.
Oh, look at this. This is a pestle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I've got one at home.
Yeah. This one's pretty well made, too.
Some things don't change.
No, they stay the same for the most part, at least some of the real basic stuff. So, I mean, we're getting... Oh, here, look, here's a grindstone here, as you see. These two are probably a pair, actually.
Doug has described a cityscape whose architecture would have looked much like the villages still dotted around Timbuktu. It's just the density that's changed.
It's amazing to learn that right here on this spot, there once existed a civilization 2,000 years ago, as old as Christianity, the size of which rivaled modern Timbuktu over there, and in terms of its antiquity, Timbuktu and the manuscripts dating back to the 11th century are beginning to look relatively, well, modern.
Archaeology has yet to tell us what happened to that civilization, or about Timbuktu's early origins, and how the town fitted into the bigger picture of a river lined with city-sized settlements. But Timbuktu's lively oral traditions tell the tale.
Local legend has it Tuareg tribesmen set up base camp here, around this well, a few miles inland from the mosquito-infested banks of the Niger River. While the Tuareg went off to graze their livestock in the desert after the rains, they left their belongings to be supervised by a slave woman, Buktu, the lady with the large navel. Hence, Timbuktu's name simply means Buktu's well.
The Tuareg have been the main ethnic group to inhabit the Sahara for centuries. Their knowledge of the desert gave them control of the trade routes that ran from the north and east and led to the Niger. By the late 10th century, the most important and safest routes had focused on the region where the Niger bends eastwards. Timbuktu's creation was no accident, but a commercial necessity.
They say that Timbuktu is where camel meets canoe, lying as it does between the Great Sahara Desert and the camel trains bringing the riches of the Mediterranean, and the river carrying gold from the fields of the south. The town was uniquely placed to flourish on trade.
Camel trains from the north brought dates, European fabrics, glass, jewelry, tobacco, and salt from the Sahara. The boats from the south bring cereals, honey, ciabatta, gold, and slaves. What made Timbuktu an important place in the Middle Ages was the gold and slaves.
It's said 2/3 of the world's gold came from Mali in the 14th century, much of it passing through Timbuktu. Today's markets are mostly a local affair, but camel trains do still arrive with the other mainstay of the city's historic wealth.
Salt was the white gold of Timbuktu. From the mines in the north it was brought down in great slabs by camel train to the town for transshipment on the river.
International trade in Timbuktu often needed written contracts. That required the services of scribes and notaries, and they needed to work in a common language that bridged frontiers.
Arabic spread across Africa in the wake of Islam, just as Christianity spread Latin across the European continent. So it's for good reason then that historians call Arabic the Latin of Africa.
In the wake of Islam, another commodity began to arrive with the camel trains. Books were soon being traded in Timbuktu's marketplaces as wealthy merchants found a new indulgence for their deep pockets and leisure time. Books greatly enhanced the status of their owners and gave the pious a deeper understanding of Islam. The profits of the book trade soon rivaled the trade in gold, salt and slaves. By the end of the 13th century, the prominent families of Timbuktu began to boast their own libraries, and the sons of those families aspired not just to trade, but to scholarship. Paper was imported from Europe and China, and a new occupation swelled the ranks of the city's workforce. Calligraphers started copying Islamic texts from abroad, as well as the work of the town's own scholars. Their labours were impressively rewarded.
If I was working back in the 15th century, I'd be earning millions. I'd have many houses, many camels, and lots of gold. You'd get many people ordering manuscripts back then, and they'd pay in gold, they'd pay in camels. They'd even exchange their houses in order to acquire manuscripts. It's a very different story today, and nowadays, I'm amongst the poorest people in the town, and I'm still the only person in the town practicing this craft.
Towards the end of the 13th century, Ghana was overtaken by the Malian Empire, and Timbuktu became the commercial hub of this new superpower. The fabulously wealthy Muslim ruler of the Malian Empire, Kanka Musa, made his pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324, stopping in Timbuktu in acknowledgement of the city's economic and cultural importance.
Kanka Musa was the greatest emperor of West Africa. He was a very religious man, very pure. He went with a huge retinue of men and women on his Hajj to Mecca. He took 15 tons of gold with him and distributed it so generously in Egypt and Mecca that the price of gold collapsed.
News of the splendor and spending power that marked Kanka Musa's progress through Egypt and Syria soon reached the ears of merchant